Grace Bible kids, what is up? It's Logan here, and I have another story for you from the Jesus Storybook Bible. And remember, at the end of last week's story, there was some people who still didn't believe in Jesus, who still didn't want to follow Jesus. There was this guy named Saul. He looked kind of angry in the corner of the page. That is who we're talking about this week, you guys. This week's story is called A New Way to See, and this story is all about that guy named Saul. You guys see, Saul was one of these Pharisees, these religious leaders who didn't believe that Jesus was the rescuer. See, he didn't like that people were believing in Jesus. So he was actually going around putting people into jail for believing in Jesus.
You believe in Jesus? Huh, send him to prison. Well, you believe in Jesus too? You go to prison.
But you guys, God had big plans for Saul. Saul was on his way to Damascus to try and do some really bad things to Jesus' disciples. And he's on his way, he's walking down the road, and suddenly a bright light surrounds Saul.
Going to Damascus, gonna put some Christians in prison.
Saul, why are you persecuting me?
Who are you, Lord? And he said, I am Jesus, whom you are persecuting. You guys, it was like Paul was blind his entire life. He didn't actually understand how to see things. But then God showed up, Jesus showed up and put some glasses on him. Oh, and now Paul could see everything more clearly. He understood that Jesus was the rescuer. God actually gave Saul a new name. He was no longer called Saul, but instead Paul. Hey! And Paul goes on to do some great things for Jesus. He becomes a servant. He travels all over the world telling everyone about Jesus. He even gets thrown in prison himself. And that's where he actually writes some of the letters from the New Testament. Hey, and I love this story so much, you guys, because when Saul was converted and believed in Jesus and became Paul, that wasn't just his story, but that's my story, and that's your story for any of you guys who believe in Jesus. And I want to tell you guys 3 major things that happen when you guys decide to believe in Jesus and are converted. Hey, the first thing is that you guys are born again. 2 Corinthians 5:17 says, therefore, if anyone is in Christ, he is a new creation. The old has passed away. Behold, the new has come. You guys are born again. You're a new creation if you put your faith in Jesus. Hey, the second thing that happened at conversion right here in Paul's story is not that Paul chose God, but actually that God chose Paul. And that's the same thing for you guys. God chose you before the foundation of the world. Before the world was even made, God chose you and called you to himself. And the third thing that happened for Paul at conversion, and that also happened for you and for me when we believe in Jesus, is that we are justified in faith alone. And what that means, you guys, is that when God looks at us, he says, you are good enough. You're good enough for me, not because of any good thing that you've done, but because of the good thing that Christ did for you. And hey, so those are the 3 things I want you guys to remember happen at conversion. Is 1, that you were born again, 2, that God chose you, and 3, that you are justified. You are good enough just by believing in Jesus. Have a good one.